You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Athan Hristodulu.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Athan Hristodulu, and today we are doing our NFL picks as we do every Thursday. Obviously, no Thursday night game this week, but it fits with my setup and how the channel goes, so we're going to push out the video anyways. Make sure you guys have it well in advance of all the games that are going to be going down this Sunday. If you enjoy what we're doing here, make sure you hit that like button and, of course, hit that subscribe button. We just hit 200 subs, and we're pushing our way now to 300, and I have a little bit of a thing kind of planned and in mind for when we hit 250 subs, so make sure you smash that sub button if you find yourself popping back here or you keep seeing me pop up and you enjoy what we're talking about, because I do have something planned for when we get to 250. Now, let's get into some NFL picks here. Before we do, up at the top, you're looking at the record, 141-97. My goal for a little bit now, since I would say the last few weeks, was to try to get to about 150 predictions correct before I hit 100 wrong. Not sure we're going to get there because we only need to lose 3 games this week, but we'll see how things shake out. Now, we got 16 games on the slate. A lot to talk about. First game on the list here is going to be the Atlanta Falcons facing off against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. Buffalo is a heavy favorite going into this one. They are minus 14.5 favorites, and I believe the over-under is sitting somewhere around 43.5, if I'm not mistaken. It is. Now, before we start diving into everything, I'm just going to tell you guys this right now. None of this is betting advice. I'm very new to this whole betting thing. I've just been talking football mainly for the last, year or so, and I've just now started to kind of explore the betting scene. Do not take my word for anything. I'm just giving you my guys' opinions and my thoughts on the lines and everything, and just kind of what I think about the teams and how realistic these outcomes are. So for this one, over-under seems like a stretch because the Bills have randomly had games this year where they have been able to not even get more than 10 points up on the board. They've struggled to put on 13 in a game. They've struggled to put 6 points up against the Jaguars. Do I think the Bills are going to have that same issue in this game? Probably not. But at the same time, when you look at the numbers, Atlanta's only averaging 18.5 points a game. They're not putting up a ton themselves. The Bills have had spurts of games where they are just not able to put up anything. While I do expect the Bills to probably handily win this game, and if you look at the betting odds there, Buffalo's a minus 14.5 favorite. Definitely something I could see happen. You never really know with, especially this season and the amount of people that have been coming and going because of COVID and whatnot. I don't know if I believe in a minus 14.5 win for Buffalo. I definitely expect them to win, probably by like 10 to 13 points or so, but 14.5, that is a tough one. That's a 3-possession game right there, or I guess 2-possession game per se, but I am going to go with Buffalo winning the game. Do I think going after the over on this is realistic? Probably not, just because it would take a lot of heavy lifting for Buffalo, and I could see Atlanta struggling to score in this one. As for that minus 14.5 for the Bills, it's definitely possible, probably maybe likely. I don't want to say probably, maybe likely, but I don't know if it's going to be that far separated, but I mean, could the Bills end up winning this game 33-10? Yeah, I could definitely see something like that happening, but I am taking Buffalo for the W. Next one up on the list, we are looking at the Giants and the Chicago Bears, 2 teams that have really struggled to put points on the board altogether. The over-under for this one is actually 36.5, which I would... if you look at the numbers here for both offenses, points scored 16.5 for the Giants per game, while the Bears are sitting at 17.7 a game. And then when you look at what the defenses are allowing, they're somewhere around 24 points or so. The defenses haven't been great, but both of these offenses have not been good at all. And that's really not even over-exaggerating. I could see the under happening on this one here. If this game ended up being like a 17-14 or like a 10-17 type of game, totally realistic outcome in my opinion. As for the Bears being minus 6 favorites, I do think the Bears have done a little bit better on the offensive side of things as opposed to what the Giants have done this season. I see the Bears winning this game, and them winning by a touchdown is definitely something I could see as a realistic outcome for this one. Next up, we're looking at Kansas City in Cincinnati. We got the Chiefs versus the Bengals here in the jungle. Bengals are coming off a massive win, destroying a division rival opponent, whereas the Chiefs are coming in with an 8-game win streak here. The Chiefs, being the away team, are actually the favorites. They're sitting at minus 5.5 as a favorite here, so a little less than a touchdown, but they still are expected to win. Then the over-under on this one, wow, this is a high one here. The over-under for this one is actually 50 points. I don't know how realistic 50 points is. I mean, granted, we have seen the Chiefs and the Bengals put up some pretty large scores in some games this year. When you look at the points allowed for both of these defenses, Kansas City's sitting at 20 a game, roughly, and then the Bengals are sitting at about 21 themselves. So, and then offensively, obviously, Kansas City fourth at 28 a game, and then the Bengals are sitting at 27.3. If you look at just what the offenses are doing, yeah, you could probably say 50 points is definitely doable. They're both averaging more than 25 a game. The defenses, though, have kept scores lower. The Chiefs' defense has been really good this year. The Bengals' defense has had a couple of games where they've looked really bad, but then they've also had a lot of games where they've looked really good. But there have been a couple of random games here and there where the Bengals' defense, especially the pass defense, was kind of nowhere to be found. I would probably take the under on this one. I don't think I would go for the over. Is it definitely possible? Could it end up being 28-33? Of course, but I think both of the defenses on this team they're in a really good place right now, and as offensively powerful both of these teams are, I think the defenses could hold them a little bit in check. This 8-game winning streak Kansas City's on is going to really be tested here, and it's in Cincinnati. I don't know if Kansas City is a clear favorite going into this game here. I think the Bengals have a really good shot at pulling an upset on this one. And I think I'm going to go with the Bengals at home. I like them in the jungle. Joe Burrow put up 525 yards and 4 TDs last week. I could definitely see the Bengals picking up another upset victory. They weren't even favorites at home last week. Or were they home? Are the favorites? I can't remember. But I don't think that they were. I'd have to look back on the last video that I talked about picks. But I like the Bengals. They're at home. Burrow's got all the swagger in the world right now. I mean, he must be feeling good coming off a massive game that he just had. And I think that this will be a really good test for the Kansas City Chiefs defense and just how well they've turned things around. I like Cincinnati. Fourth game up on the list, we are looking at the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The over-under for this one here is sitting at 45, and the Colts are favored at -6. It is at home. Colts do not have potentially don't have Carson Wentz for this game. I guess there is like a slim hope that because of the way the CDC changed their guidelines, Carson Wentz could play on Sunday if he tests negative, I think the day before or something like that, because it'll have been 5 days since his first I think it's a close contact he's dealing with. I don't know. I try to stay away from the COVID stuff as much as possible. I don't like to read about it too much because it just kind of gives me a headache. I just look at who's playing and who's not and who potentially may or may not be playing depending on how things go for them. So if he tests negative, I believe on Saturday or Sunday that day, he should be good to go to play. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Obviously, that remains to be seen. But when you look at the over-under, let's say that Carson Wentz is going to play 46. Is that what it was? 45, excuse me. Definitely a realistic number here. When you look at what the Raiders do offensively, about 21 points a game, the Colts are sitting at 28. I could see the scoreline going like 20-28, something like that. This could be a little bit of a higher scoring type of game. And then when you look at like defensively, both of these teams have actually allowed a fair amount of points as well. So all numbers are kind of pointing in that direction of the game. If Carson Wentz is in and playing for the offense of the Colts, into that direction of the 45+ range. I could definitely see something like that being a realistic possibility. As for the Colts being -6 favorites, that really boils down to, I think, if Carson Wentz plays. They're apparently very high on Sam Ehlinger, but I also heard that they were trying to reach out to Phillip Rivers. So, like, how high are they really if he's in there? If Carson Wentz isn't in, I expect a very run-heavy game plan from the Indianapolis Colts in this one here, especially because when you look at what the Raiders have done defensively, they're about 19th in the league at a roughly 115 yards a game allowed on the ground, so I could see the Colts trying to take advantage of that, especially without Carson Wentz. But my idea is that somehow, by some miracle, Carson Wentz is going to be able to play, and if he does, I do think I like them at -6, and I will take them as the victors at home in this game. Fifth game up on the list that I have here is the Jaguars at the Patriots. The Patriots must win this game if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. They are -15.5 favorites at a 41 over-under. I would probably not go with the over on this one here just because there have been games where the Patriots have struggled to score and the Jaguars have struggled even more than they have to score. I could definitely see this one being sub, 41? So I would definitely look at the under for that one there. As for the Patriots being -15.5, I would probably buy that as well, just because of the fact that Bill Belichick is really good at outcoaching inexperienced head coaches, and the fact that the Jaguars are currently running with an interim head coach right now. I could see the Patriots doing circles around the Jaguars here. It would take a Herculean type of effort for the Jacksonville Jaguars to win this game, and I fully expect the Patriots to win, and especially it being in Foxborough, in Gillette Stadium, win handedly. Next up, we're looking at the Bucs and the Jets. In New York, the Buccaneers have just won their first NFC South Division title for the first time since 2007. Big win for them. Congratulations to Tom Brady and company. They are going to face off against a Jets team that's already eliminated from the playoffs. They are minus 13 favorites and an over-under of 45. While the Jets can't really score a ton of points, I feel like going into this one, they are facing off against a defense that has... 20.8 points allowed, so almost 21 points a game in the Buccaneers. And on top of that, the Buccaneers are a team that are scoring about 29.5. I don't see the Jets doing a lot of the scoring in this one. It's going to be the Buccaneers. I think they just won, 36 to 6, I think, last week against the Panthers. I could see them doing a lot of the heavy lifting in that over-under right there at 45. I mean, if the Bucs pound the Jets, which Tom Brady has done a lot in his career, if they ended up winning 40-10 or something like that, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, I could definitely see it happening. The Jets really don't have a ton to play for except for draft capital at this point. I could definitely see New York maybe putting up a touchdown or two, maybe in garbage time if things really get out of hand. That's where that over would probably start to come into play. As for minus 13 favorites, I definitely think Tampa Bay, and despite whether they're visitors or not, I think Tampa Bay gets it done. Tom Brady's playing against a team that he has perennially destroyed multiple times in his career. I'm going to go with Buccaneers winning this one. Next up, we got the Dolphins taking on the Titans. So the Dolphins are coming into this one 7-game winning streak, whereas the Titans are sitting in the number 2 seed in the AFC. They definitely got to win this game if they want any hopes of winning the AFC and getting that number 1 seed. If the Chiefs lose this week to the Bengals, like I just mentioned early on, and the Titans get a W here, they're in the driver's seat if they win this week and next week for that number 1 spot, which would be massive for them to have home field throughout. With all of the injuries and everything Tennessee has dealt with, they could definitely use a little bit of a break and get themselves a bye week in the wild card round. Whereas when you look at the Dolphins, I don't know if I trust the Dolphins as much. They've had, and a lot of people have already talked about this, suspect 7-win streak with the teams that they've beaten. 7 wins in the NFL is 7 wins in the NFL, especially in a row at the end of the day. While I don't want to take away any credit from what the Dolphins have done, the Titans have been very resilient. They just got A.J. Brown back, and he did a great job last week in his return. I think that the healthier this Titans team gets, the more threatening they become. This is going to be a real big test for Miami, and it's in Tennessee. I would probably take the Titans in this one here. That's probably the safest go, in my opinion. And if we're looking at the numbers here, Tennessee is a minus 3.5 favorite only. The over-under sitting at 39.5. 40 points. Do I think that's possible between these two teams? I could see 40 points as a realistic thing. I'd probably go the over on that one there. As for the Tennessee being minus 3.5 favorites, I would definitely take that as well. That's a pretty easy one there. 3.5, I could see the Titans winning by even 7 or more just based off of offensive production and if things go really well in their favor. And I feel like, I don't want to say the Dolphins are going to get exposed this week, but I think that they're going to run to a really good Titans team that has been very well coached and, like I said, very resilient. And I think the Titans get the W here. Next up, I just punched my mic. We got ourselves the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington football team. We have an NFC East divisional matchup here. Philadelphia minus 3 favorites, over under sitting at 44.5. I would actually probably go with the under on this one here just because the Washington football team's offense has not really looked good recently. There are a lot of issues going on over there. We saw D linemen punching each other in the face on the same sideline. So a lot of questions going on over there in Washington. I really hope they can bounce back from that and all of that has been sorted out. But for the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that has pretty much run all over a lot of people in this league and has a defense that has been sneakily good. When you look at points allowed, only 21 a game, whereas when you look at Washington, you're sitting at about 27. The big thing here, though, is just how many points that could potentially be put on the board here. Philadelphia Eagles have the number 1 rushing attack in yardage terms, but Washington 104.2 yards a game. That's actually 8th best in the league. That is the one strength that Washington really has. So I think it's going to force Philadelphia to throw things more. I could see the score end up being a little bit lower because the running game might not be as effective going up against this. Again, it's the one good thing that Washington has really, really excelled at this year defensively. So if you can stop the run, you can slow the Eagles. I could see this game possibly taking the under. As for the winner, though, I do like Philadelphia -3. I could see that happening. It's probably going to be a tighter game. It's a divisional matchup, and the NFC East tends to play each other fairly competitively. I go Eagles with the win in Washington. I could definitely see a -3 or so. Next up, we're looking at the LA Rams visiting the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know if the Ravens are going to have Lamar Jackson or not for this game. That's something that I'm sure is probably still very much up in the air. Rams are -3.5 favorites. The over-under is 46.5. I would take the over just because the secondary over there in Baltimore is depleted, but somehow Baltimore offensively keeps finding ways to put up a ton of points despite whoever it is that's starting at quarterback for them. I don't know how they're managing that. Maybe it's because they're really well coached with John Harbaugh. Whatever it may be, I don't know, but they are still getting a bunch of points up there. I could see them putting up 17, maybe 20 points. I could see the Rams dropping like 35 against this secondary here. It really just boils down to the injuries that Baltimore has dealt with here. It's going to take a really good effort by Baltimore to slow down this Rams offense that's been fairly potent, even when there's mistakes being made. They had 3 interceptions last week from Matt Stafford, and they still managed 30 points against the Vikings. So, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. They can still find points even when they're making mistakes. As for the -3, -3.5 definitely seems likely. I could see the Rams probably winning this game by like 7 to 10 points or so. I could see Baltimore, especially at home. They have the home field advantage and a very excited crowd and playoffs on the line here. They pretty much need this win or their season's going to be all but over. So it could be a close one. Do I see the Rams winning by like 7 to 10? Probably. As for that over-under, like I said, I could definitely see the over happening. It's only 46.5. And like I said, even when the Rams are making a lot of mistakes, they're still able to put up like 30 points. And the Ravens haven't had Lamar Jackson in 2 weeks. And I remember them having 30 points against the Packers. And they still put up, I believe, 21 last week against the Bengals. So if things get out of hand, garbage time points, or the Ravens keep it fairly close, I could definitely see the over being hit in this one here. Next up on the list, we got the Broncos taking on the Chargers in LA. This is an interesting one because both of these teams really need a win here if they want any shot at the playoffs. It's pretty much like if the Chargers lose, playoff hopes are really getting dashed here. Broncos have to win this game if they want any shot at potentially making it into the playoffs and sneaking in at like 9-8, whereas the Chargers, they need this win here. Honestly, the Chargers need to be 10-7 if they really want to have good shots at getting into the playoffs here, and I think the Broncos, I'm pretty sure if they lose, are just out at this point. Over-under for this one's 46.5. I would take the under on that one. The Chargers are the -6.5. The reason I would take the under is because the Broncos offense I do not trust. Their numbers are not good. They're averaging about 20 points a game, whereas the Chargers are sitting at about 27. So it puts you at about 47, but when you look at points allowed per game, the Broncos only allow about 17, whereas the Chargers do allow 27 or so a game, about 27.5. However, this Broncos offense is just not great at putting points on the board. I could really see the under happening here, a game that's like 27-17. I don't think that equals more than 46.5, does that? No, it does not. 27, 17, 37, that's like 44. So yeah, I could definitely see something along that lines making sense there. I would take the under. As for the Chargers being 6.5 favorites, like I said, 27-17 score, somewhere around there. Denver struggling to put points up on the board. I could definitely see it happening. Their offense has struggled with Drew Lock for sure. I would go Chargers -6.5. -6.5 for sure. Next up on the list, we have ourselves the Houston Texans visiting the 49ers. It sounds like Jimmy G is going to be able to play. There is a potential for him to be under center for the 49ers come kickoff time. That'll be an interesting one to watch here. The 49ers, a game they need to win, going up against a Houston team that just came off a really big and surprising win against the Chargers. So do not sleep on them. I'm going to label this a trap game for San Francisco. Do not slip up and lose to this Houston team. Again, they put up 41 points last week. Doesn't matter if it's a bunch of backups. 41 points in the NFL is still 41 points. Davis Mills is starting to turn a few heads, and he's looking pretty competent now that he has almost an entire season under his belt. I would not be surprised if the Texans have him in either a QB1 battle or just turn the reins over to him if Deshaun Watson, and I guess that's more of a when, not if Deshaun Watson leaves Houston at that point. Davis Mills, he's shown some pretty good flashes, and I was pretty high on him coming out of the draft. I thought the Steelers would probably go after him. That seemed like a logical place for him to go. That was prior to the whole Deshaun Watson thing, obviously. But I do think I like the 49ers in this one here. I trust them more as a team. They have fared much better. They have playoff hopes on the line. You have to think the energy is going to be there. They do have home field advantage, which has not really felt like home field advantage. They're only 3-4 this year at home, and their overall record since opening up Levi Stadium has not been great. San Francisco minus 12.5. I could see Houston keeping this game close for some reason. I don't know what it is that's telling me that. I could see it being a closer one than 12. That would... That's a good one there. I don't know about that one. I'm just gonna say I don't know for that one. I'm not 100% sure because this one could really go either way. I could see Houston keeping it close, but I could also see them getting completely blown out of the water in this one here. As for the over/under, it's sitting at 44. When you look at the numbers, Texans are only averaging 16.5 points a game. 49ers are sitting at 25. And then when you look at what the defenses are allowing, San Francisco's allowing about 22 a game, whereas Houston's allowing about 26.5 or so, give or take, depending on the day. 44? I think the over is possible on that one here. I could see San Francisco getting somewhere around like 21 points or so, maybe 24 points or so, 3 touchdowns and a field goal, something like that. Houston maybe rattles off a couple of touchdowns or so here and there, maybe a couple field goals. I could definitely see the over for 44. I could be wrong on that one, but I could see it happening. I am going to take the 49ers for the win, though. I like them at Levi's Stadium. Playoff hopes on the line. I think they take the win. Next up, we got the Cardinals taking on the Dallas Cowboys. This is an interesting game. You have a team in the Cardinals that are slumping at the absolute wrong time right now, whereas the Cowboys are riding high off of an absolute dismantling of a division rival, 56-14. This game a few weeks ago looked a lot closer. I'm starting to get worried about the Cardinals. They lost to a practice squad Indianapolis Colts, and honestly, I picked the Colts to win last week, and then when I saw all the people they had to take out of the game because of COVID, I did not expect it to go the way it did. I thought Indianapolis was going to end up losing, and I ate my words, but I still got the pick right because I did lock them in as my choice. I don't know if the Cardinals can keep up right now with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that the Cowboys offense is really starting to click. The defense has been looking pretty good. The passing yardage is a little bit of a concern, and Arizona's fairly good passing the football. They're 10th in the league at about 250 yards a game, whereas the Cowboys are allowing roughly 240, which is 20th in the league. However, I think the big thing here is that the Cowboys are scoring a league-high 30.5 points a game, just absolutely dunking on teams. But the Cardinals are sitting at about 20 a game, which is 5th best in the league. I could see them slowing the Cowboys offense a little bit. The big question is, can the offense hang in there and hang with the Dallas Cowboys, even if the defense slows them down? Cowboys are really good at holding teams. They're allowing about 20.5 a game as well. I think the Cowboys win this one. As for the over-under, it's sitting at 51.5. I don't really know about that. You have the number 1 and number 10 scoring offense, and then you have the number 5 and number 7 in points allowed defenses playing up against each other. I don't see the Dallas Cowboys routing Arizona in this one should they win, and I'm probably going to go with Dallas taking the W in this game. It is at home, and I think that they're really trying to see if they can steal, the number 1 seed away from the Packers here if they just keep winning and maybe the Packers slip up and lose a game or maybe even the next couple. I don't know about 51.5. That is a really high score line. I could see the score being a little bit lower. I don't think this turns into a shootout. I think it ends up being a little bit more defensive than some people are thinking. And then for the Dallas minus 5.5, I could see them winning by like a touchdown or so. That's probably how it ends up shaking out. It might even come down to like a 3-point game. So that's kind of like a wash right there. It depends on just how much you believe in the Cowboys offense and how much you don't believe in the Cardinals defense. But I do take the Cowboys for the win. I like -5.5. I don't know how I feel about going after the over on 51.5, though. That is a very high score line. Both of the defenses, which have been fairly impressive, would have to really crumble against the offenses of both of these teams for that score line to get hit. Next up, we're looking at the Panthers taking on the New Orleans Saints. This one's in New Orleans, and honestly, the Saints have won some games that made no sense considering their quarterback situation, and they've also looked abysmal in other games as well. They have not looked great since Jameis Winston has been gone. You're looking at the over-under. It's only 39.5. You could probably safely take the under in this one, considering Carolina can't really score squat, and they're going up against a tough New Orleans defense, whereas if Ian Book is starting for the Saints, or if it's even Taysom Hill, I don't really know if New Orleans could get over 20 points going up against a Carolina defense that has been, they were really good towards the beginning of the season, have kind of slumped since then, but I mean, if they're taking advantage of an offense that's in a really bad spot, I could see them having a good game. Under seems realistic for this one. New Orleans at -7. I don't know about that. This feels like a 3.4-point differential type of game, like 20-24 or something like that. No, not 20-24. That's a really high guess. I don't believe that. I could see like 10-14, honestly, if both offenses are really struggling, maybe 10-17. I don't know if I want to say 20-24. But I would, the under is definitely something I could see happening here. As for -7, I could see the Saints winning by a touchdown. That seems realistic. Carolina has had a hard time putting up points this year. I could see the Saints by 7. I do like the Saints. I would take them for the W. I think the Saints get the win here this week. By 7 points could be realistic. The under, probably realistic for this one as well. Lions taking on the Seattle Seahawks. This one's in Seattle here. Detroit been uber competitive against some really good teams this year, whereas when you're looking at the Seahawks, they've been fairly competitive themselves. They've lost 5 games by 1 possession or less. Seattle's been in a lot of games, but they've lost some heartbreakers. I think Seattle is the better team of the two. They're -7 favorites, which I could definitely see that. Jared Goff is supposed to be under center for them this week, is from what I am reading and what I've seen. So I do expect the Detroit offense to be a little bit more effective, but I could see the Seahawks winning by about 7 points or more, maybe even 10 or so. It seems realistic. As for the over-under sitting at 43.5, I would need to pull up the numbers for this one to really get a good idea here. We got Detroit and Seattle here. Let's look at what these offenses are doing here. So the Seahawks are sitting at about 20.4 points a game, whereas the Lions are sitting very low at 17.3, which is 29th in the league. Not great. Seahawks have had actually one of the better scoring defense, or not scoring defenses, but like preventing points allowed. They're sitting at 7th with 20.5 a game, whereas the Lions are letting up about 25.7. I could see the Seahawks putting up a fair amount of points. I think, there's been a lot of talk about how efficient this offense is and how much they have struggled. I feel like Russell Wilson wants a game to at least show everyone that he's not quite done yet. And I could see the Lions defense as the game for him to have, where he could put up, 30 points for the offense there, or at least orchestrate a 30-point game or so for the Seattle Seahawks. As for the Lions, I could see them maybe, tossing up a couple of touchdowns here and there, a touchdown pass and maybe a rushing touchdown, something like that. I could see that too. 43.5, that's a wash for me. I don't think I have a real answer on that one. I could see that being an over. I could see that being an under. I don't think the Lions put up a ton of points, but there's potential for Seattle to do so. But them -7 definitely makes sense to me. I do take Seattle winning there in Seattle. Next up, we got the Vikings and the Packers. Last time these two teams met, Packers lost in an upset. It was in Minnesota. Packers were the favorites. Minnesota got the win regardless. Minnesota seems to play the Packers really well. And I was actually reading something, not something, but like people talking about it, just fans going back and forth, bantering on some social media somewhere. And they were talking about how it really feels like the Vikings are always playing the Packers very aggressively, and they win the games sometimes when they shouldn't be winning the games. This kind of feels like that. It would be very, very unfortunate for the Packers to choke this one, especially being at home. They have been so good at home, 7-0 on the year. Meanwhile, when you look at what the Vikings have done, they're only 3-5 on the road. So I don't expect there to be an upset in this game. I would take the Packers to win this game. The line has them at -6.5, whereas the over-under is at 47. Packers defense has let up a little bit in recent weeks. They have been very good at points in this season, though. Very, very good at certain points in this season. At one point, people were talking about how the defense was picking up the slack for the offense, and now it's like the offense is surging, but the defense is slipping. Whereas the Vikings defense has not been great this year. Nothing to write home about. I remember a lot of Vikings fans were upset with me not picking them as the number one team in the NFC North earlier in the year before the season started, trying to tell me that their defense was going to be back and better than ever. All these pieces were coming in and they made all these additions. Well, they're 23rd in points per game allowed at just about 25. They're 28th in rushing yards allowed, 27th in passing yards allowed, whereas you're going up against a Green Bay Packers offense that's at least in the top half of the league, 13th in points scored. They're sitting at 11th in passing yards, as close to the top 10. I could see the Packers really taking advantage of this defense, putting up a ton of points. They're in Lambeau. That should benefit them. While the Vikings are a northern team, they are an indoor northern team, whereas the Packers in Lambeau, icy cold Lambeau. I don't know what the weather is supposed to be for this game, but I'm curious. 5 degrees. It is going to be very warm in Lambeau. So good luck to the Vikings. I think the Packers get the win here. Minus, 6.5? I like Green Bay for a touchdown win. 7, maybe 10 points at most. Probably going to be a little bit of a lower scoring affair if it's going to be so cold. Players are going to have a hard time hanging on to the ball, things like that. I think the ground game might be a little bit more effective in this one than anything else. Over under, it's 47. I'm going to take the under. When games get this cold, teams tend to struggle to put up points. We've seen it. I remember Seattle and the Vikings when they were playing a few years back in a really, really cold game. Granted, that one was in like the negatives. Still, same point applies. We are well below freezing going into this one at 5 degrees. I think it's a lower scoring affair. The under makes sense. Green Bay Packers take the win at home. And then the last one we are looking at here is the Monday night game. We have the Cleveland Browns taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This has playoff implications written all over it, as do pretty much any game that involves the AFC North. Any team that's in the AFC North, the Browns, the Steelers, the Bengals, the Ravens, all 4 of them, it's literally win or go home for them, no matter who it is. So with that in mind, Steelers got to get the W. They're at home. They're sitting at 7-1. Browns are sitting at 7-8. Same thing applies for the Browns there. When you look at everything and really break everything down, the Browns defense has been a little bit better than, or not a little bit, but fairly more better than the, and that was an ugly sentence there, fairly better than the Steelers. We don't need to add the word more in there. The Steelers defense has honestly not lived up to what I was expecting them. They were like the 3rd best defense last year, and just week after week after week have started to really let up and let things get by them. They're 32nd in rushing yards allowed. I don't even know when that happened because I did not think that was them. I thought it was somebody. I thought it was the Chargers, and now apparently it's the Steelers. And then on top of that, their total yardage allowed sitting at 26th. They're allowing almost 25 points a game. Defense is really starting to struggle, whereas Cleveland defense has been pretty solid. Points allowed is a little bit high, but realistically, in terms of yardage, they're really not letting teams move the ball too much. They're ranked top 10 in rushing yards, passing yards, and total yardage allowed. It's just the points that they're allowing is roughly 22 a game. I could see the Cleveland Browns. It's in Pittsburgh, 29 degrees, so a little bit of a colder game, but not too cold. We're only a few degrees below freezing. 3rd ranked rushing offense in Cleveland going up against the worst rushing defense in the league. I could see the Browns trying to take advantage of that. They've been pretty steady stopping the run. Pittsburgh only averaging about 87 yards a game, roughly, give or take, depending on the day. 29th in the league, whereas the Browns' defensive ranking against the rush is 10th in the league at 105, pretty much 106. I think Cleveland gets the win here. What is the line here? Cleveland's actually the favorite, so Cleveland -3 definitely makes sense. I think it's going to be a tight one. It's definitely not going to be a blowout type situation here. I see Cleveland winning the game fairly close. I like -3. As for the over/under at 40.5, both offenses have somewhat struggled this year and not put up quite the amount of points you would expect, especially the Browns. I think a lot of people expected the Browns to be putting up far more than just about 21 points a game. I think it's a lower scoring affair. The under is definitely realistic. If it gets colder than what's expected, I could definitely see that dipping even lower. I think the cold games result in a lot of low scoring affairs. I like the Browns getting the win away against the Steelers and getting a fat W on Monday Night Football. That is my NFL picks for the week. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your all opinions. What are your scores? What are your guesses, predictions, all that good stuff. I will see you guys in the next video. I got a few videos lined up for you in the next few days. We'll be talking about the state of the Seattle Seahawks, the state of the New York Giants. We got the Jets in line, the Bears. I got a handful of teams we're going to be discussing as well, so make sure you keep an eye out for those videos, especially if you're fans for those teams. But I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your Thursday, and enjoy some football when Sunday rolls around.